This is the Jeep Compass, or so it says on the bonnet and on the doors. But no matter how many Jeep Easter eggs the designers have put around this car, this is not a Jeep. And in this episode, I'll explain why. Spoiler alert, in a moment I will absolutely trash this car. The only thing I like about it are its looks. Yes, from a distance, at a certain angle, it looks like a Jeep, or rather a modern interpretation of a Jeep. I think it looks better than the previous two generations of the Compass, though that's not difficult. However, this is where the good news ends. This Jeep imposter is in fact the Citroën C5, Aircross, Opel Grandland or Peugeot 5008, but dressed in hiking garb to make it look more adventurous. Let me repeat, to make it look. If you want to know more about the practical aspects of the Drivetrain Comcross, watch my review of the real Citroën C5 Aircross, link in the video description and on the screen. Under the bonnet is the next generation of the 3-cylinder 1.2-litre PureTech engine, which is now called the e-hybrid because it's a mild hybrid. It makes 145 horsepower, which doesn't sound like much by today's standards, but back in the day, if you wanted an XJ Cherokee with more power, you had to splash on a 4-litre engine. However, there is a problem with the 1.2 PureTech, and I'm not talking about the Campbell puree. This engine can only power one axle, the one above which it is mounted. Of course, many SUVs these days come with on-demand all-wheel drive, with the rear axle being powered by some variation of the multi-plate clutch or a hybrid powertrain where the electric motor drives the rear wheels. That's how Dacia did it, for example, but not Stellantis, one of the world's automotive giants. Stellantis does have a PHEV-based all-wheel drive system, and you can buy the Compass with a PHEV, but only front-wheel drive. If you want all-wheel drive, you'll have to wait for the battery electric version, but not for the regular one. You'll have to splurge on the long-range model. You can also import a US spec Compass, for now with a 2-litre petrol engine. In the future, there's also going to be a 1.6 regular hybrid with eCVT, and it's actually a Prince engine, which Mini and Peugeot owners remember oh too well. If you're wondering if this can go further south from here, let me assure you it can. While the Compass in this form will never see anything more challenging than a medium-sized curb, the designers decided to keep things which make an off-roader somewhat annoying in everyday use. The suspension is set up for rougher roads, which you are unlikely to visit without all-wheel drive. The steering is lazy like an old cat on a sunny day, and the engine characteristics are like in an old diesel. And that's despite this being a mild hybrid. I don't know how Stellantis managed to fuck this up. I had the same engine with the same power in the Opel Frontera. Yes, Stellantis decided to violate that legend as well, but at least over there nobody's pretending the Frontera has anything to do with off-roading. And that Dacia Duster that just overtook me is a better car than this shit. Of course, putting the same engine with the same parameters into a larger and heavier vehicle will result in worse performance, and this is the case here. The Compass is less economical than the Frontera. Instead of claimed less than 6 liters per 100 kilometers in the combined cycle, I barely managed to get it down to below 8. The only positive is the acceleration. In the Frontera, it was worse than the manufacturer claimed. The Compass, in sport mode, was marginally quicker than promised. However, whereas the Frontera felt light and agile, the way the Compass is set up and how much it weighs make it feel like a much larger car than it really is. Price of the Jeep Compass start at €39,900. This car is the first edition model. With options, it costs €45,670. That's about $3,500 more than a comparably spec'd Citroën C5 Aircross, which doesn't pretend to be something that it isn't. Jeep is a legend. Stellantis decided to take this legend and squeeze it into a spreadsheet. Why? Beats me. But if you couldn't afford a Jeep, you still cannot afford it, because this is not a Jeep. If you like my sarcastic, down-to-earth and possibly mildly amusing car reviews, join me every Friday at 3 p.m. Central European Time, and don't forget to subscribe and like this video, as it helps me with the YouTube algorithm. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.